Rejoice! Eggheads is back and our superstar quizzers are ready and raring to take on members of the public in one of the most successful quiz shows on TV of all time. So, to celebrate the new series and to make sure you are tip-top with your skills at quizzing, they've created a masterclass. So you're ready not just for the show, but for your own local pub quiz too. I think quizzing is a really British thing. I've thought again and again, why do we love quizzes so much? And I reckon we're a nation of show-offs. And if you've got knowledge, you can show off. Knowledge is better than a car. You can really show off with knowledge. And we love to show off. Every day when I present Eggheads, I think, right, I'm going to remember the answers this time. And I look at them. And then after the show, I can't remember. I think I might have asked 35, 40,000 questions. I only really remember the answers I'm interested in. That's what makes the Eggheads different. They remember everything. If I had to choose a subject where I could be certain I would beat the Eggheads, it would be the first 12 albums of David Bowie. I mean, I don't think they could do that. I don't think they could anyway. First one is called David Bowie, then it's The Man Who Sold the World, classic third album, Hunky Dory, then Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, then Low, then Heroes, then Lodger, then Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, and then Let's Dance. How am I doing? I missed one out. Aladdin Sane, I missed out. Diamond Dogs, Pin-Ups. There's another 3. As a quizmaster, I can't make very dramatic expressions, but if somebody gets an answer I'm not expecting, I normally go like that. My quick tips for a pub quiz. Number 1, get on with your teammates, because when it goes wrong, you don't want them to blame you. Number 2, go on instinct. If you think you know the answer, immediately you hear the question, it's probably the right answer. And number 3, use shortcuts. So the classic is, you got a question about skateboards, just say Tony Hawk. Different Eggheads have different strengths. Lisa you choose for her voice, her singing, her spirit. Judith you choose, well, she's the £1 million woman. Pat's extraordinary when it comes to geography. But as for Kevin, he knows everything except food and drink. If you get a question about food and drink, don't choose Kevin because he won't know. He uses his oven to store books. We've got a lot coming your way now, courtesy of the brilliant Eggheads who've won Millionaire and they've won the World Quiz Championship, etc. So brain power, incredible, enough to light a small village. But they're here for you. Get your notepad out, and their tips in their masterclass are coming your way.
Hello, I'm Judith and an Egghead, and I'm also the first person to win Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and the only woman. This is my winning face. I'm going to tell you how to prepare for a quiz and retain the knowledge. Okay, read the newspapers, but you don't need to read the whole article necessarily. Read the headlines. That's the most important thing. I do a lot of that with sport. Whenever you're confronted with something you don't know, look it up on your telephone. If it's a date or a fact or a battle or a football player or whatever, look it up on your telephone and try and remember it. Become aware of what makes a good quiz question. For example, Liz Truss was made Foreign Secretary lately. She's only the second female Foreign Secretary in the UK. Who was the first? Now that is a very good quiz question. It's Margaret Beckett, by the way. I do crossword puzzles, which I suppose is a form of brain training, cryptic and general knowledge. Before we do a series of Eggheads, I do a lot of revision, particularly the sort of the contemporary things that have happened, like who's the Prime Minister and contemporary sports stuff in the last year or so. And I target my weak areas. I've just never been interested in sport, and that for me is the hardest thing of all to revise and learn about, because I find it very difficult to be interested in it. And you need to be interested in it to retain the facts. So I try and make myself interested in sport and start watching it on the telly just before the start of a series. So I get familiar with it and the people. The subjects I love are art and history and literature, all the sort of art subjects. Name all the novels that Jane Austen wrote. There's Persuasion, Northanger Abbey, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma, and possibly Sanditon, I don't think you can ever be over-prepared for a quiz. The last person in the world who's supposed to have known everything there was to know was Sir Christopher Wren. Since then, knowledge is vast, and so you can never know enough. You can't possibly know everything. You can never know enough. So just keep learning.
Hello, I'm Kevin Ashman, member of the Eggheads quiz team. I still hold the record score on Mastermind after many, many, many years, and captain of the England quiz team. How I started in quizzing was just having really a general curiosity about the world around and trying to find out about as many different subjects as I could, not just those that I was perhaps studying. Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about tackling areas of weakness. After all, it's not rocket science, even if it is rocket science. This is my quiz concentration face, and it's not actually much different from my face the rest of the time. So, some top tips on how to tackle your areas of weakness. Well, the first one is quite simple really. It is read. However you choose to do that. You may prefer books, you may prefer the internet, doesn't really matter. It's all about the information. Stories are often a good way in. Another idea, another tip is not to avoid your weak subjects. You may not feel entirely comfortable with them, but it makes a difference if you can perhaps visit some sites associated with that subject. So, for example, in the case of science, maybe a visit to the Science Museum. Who knows what you might find there that would pique your interest. So it's important to find enjoyment even in your areas of weakness, and who knows, you could find that you're actually developing an interest in a topic that it never occurred to you that you might be interested in. That's what quizzing is all about in a sense. So there's the competitive aspect, of course, but it's also about finding out more about the world around you, and that's a great thing. Curiosity is a great thing, and it is really the joy of discovery. At the end of the day, everything is interconnected. One other top tip is do keep up with current events. Quizzes always have a reasonable proportion of questions that come from current affairs, current events, which is quite simply because the people setting the questions are prompted by something they've seen. I don't think there's any such thing really as a boring quiz subject. It's all in the eye of the beholder, and as I mentioned before, people have different subjects that are a good fit for them. So that's very much going to be down to personal taste. Some things will be more to your taste than others. That doesn't mean you can't learn about the ones that aren't so much to your taste. That's the whole point, really. There's general knowledge that does what it says on the tin. It's about everything. Now, there are certain things that just come up again and again, so they really are amongst the first things you need to look at. One of those is the periodic table. Science is something that not everybody is particularly happy with to begin with, but if you learn the periodic table, that's a very useful thing and can give you an entry into all kinds of other aspects of science. When it comes to history, there do tend to be a lot of questions about things like kings and queens. So if you know your dates and know your lists of kings and queens, that's very good. And some things like Henry VIII's 6 wives come up out of all proportion, so make sure you know them. I can name all the wives of Henry VIII. I learned those a long time ago. It's Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr, in order. So build on that curiosity. Find your curiosity, build on it. Don't be afraid of your weak areas. I'm the same as anybody else. I have areas that make me sigh inwardly or keep at them, and it's amazing what will fall into place. At the end of the day, we do quizzing. Yes, it's a competitive game, but we do it because we love it. And I hope you find that you love it too. So good luck with your quizzing.
I'm Lisa Teal, I'm one of the Eggheads, and I got my big break in quizzing by telling Anne Robinson on live camera that she wasn't talented. So these are my top tips when it comes to choosing your quiz team. Try and build a team where you're covering a lot of different areas of knowledge. Bring in your classicists and your heavy metal enthusiasts, juxtapose your scientists and your foodies. You've got to make sure that you've covered as many bases as possible with the people that you've got in the team. More importantly, make sure that the people that you are quizzing with are people that you know and trust and can have a proper good discussion with. Trust is vital. It's all very well in a quiz when you know the answer to the question that's come up. The problems arise when you don't know the answer to the question, and that is when you have to get down, get dirty with the rest of your teammates and start discussing the possibilities. And if you don't trust the people that you're talking to, those discussions suddenly get very difficult. I am very much the low culture person in the team. I won't be able to tell you everything about Greek mythology and the periodic table, but you give me the names of celebrities' children and I am your absolute authority over the rest of the Eggheads. Right, so the children of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, here we go. There is Maddox, Pax, Zahara, Shiloh, that's Angelina's first biological child, and then you've got Knox and Vivienne, and I think it's only 6. I'm also often the leader when it comes to a kind of huddle situation. I will be the one who is organising everyone, going, right, what do we think? Tell me what you know, tell me what you don't know, tell me what we can use to rule this out. Right, we're having a vote, let's do the answer or Jeremy's going to get cross. You also have to think about how well you know the way that someone reacts under pressure. So if you put them in a situation where you're asking them something and they don't know, how do they respond? What are the kind of things they say? How do they look? What are their tells? How can you get into their mind and work out their level of certainty about the answer? The primary person you don't want on your team is a person that shouts everybody else down and is always confident that they know the answer. A, that's not good team behaviour, there's no I in team, and B, it's just really loud and annoying and it's going to ruin your night. C, actually 9 times out of 10 they don't know the answer, and then you feel stupid that you listen to the loudest person instead of the person with the most knowledge. Okay, so you sat in the pub and you're looking around to identify your competition. Look for the families that are sitting around in a pub quiz. Families obviously have had years to hone the level of trust and understanding of each person. They know the strengths and weaknesses of one another. They'll be able to have frank and healthy discussions about what a good answer is. And it makes them very difficult to beat, particularly if there are married couples in there, because they have got the level of trust and the ability to argue down to a fine art. I think when you go to a pub quiz, you've got to bring your competitive head and you've got to be ready to think about the answers and commit to working things out. I mean, nobody wants to go to a pub quiz where somebody Googles all the answers and then wins the beer vouchers. That's not the point. Who goes to, who aims to cheat in an exam? That's not the way that this works. The point is to use your brain and think about the answers as you go along. So if you don't bring your competitive head, is there really any point in playing? So this is a smile that I give on Eggheads when I want Jeremy to be unnerved before we start a round. Okay, so if you want one thing to take away, you want to go for different subjects but similar personalities. It's good to have people that know different things from you, but it's better to have people who think like you and whose brain works like yours, because it's so much easier to work with them when you don't know an answer. If you don't know somebody very well, they can have all the knowledge in the world, but when it comes to an answer that neither of you knows, if you don't understand how their brain ticks, and you don't get on with them and you can't have a free and frank discussion without it turning into a proper disagreement, then you're never going to get to that right answer.
Hello, I'm Pat Gibson. I spent many years as a software developer. I now answer questions as a member of the Eggheads panel. I started quizzing at the age of 16 when I took part in Brain of Ireland, and got to the final and experienced such comprehensive stage fright I couldn't speak. So needless to say, I didn't win. Here are my top tips on how to keep calm under pressure. There's no doubt that whether your competition is on television or radio, or whether it's in a pub or a sports club, pressure arises if you really want to win, and dealing with that pressure is important. Panicking doesn't help. If it did, I'd recommend it, but it doesn't. You need to, as far as you can, keep your nerves under control and approach it like a ninja. Approach the questions You take each in turn and attempt to get the best result you possibly can. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved geography, but I think now I spend a lot of time on all sorts of things. I read style supplements, I do all sorts of things. It's a grim business, but the work has to be done. I might be a bit rusty here because I was a child when I was fascinated by geography, but I think the 5 longest rivers, I think the Nile comes in first, followed by the Amazon. I think we then have the Mississippi, Missouri, that's 3. The Yangtze is definitely top 5, that's 4. Where would we go for the 5th? Something like the Mekong, the Lena, I'm not entirely sure about the 5th. You should know what sort of quiz you're going to take part in, the structure of it, any tactics that are involved. You don't want to be dealing with surprises while sitting in the hot seat. Give it some thought in advance and address some of the possible crunch decisions that might arise. So many people's campaigns come a cropper right at the beginning. They're sitting in the chair, they haven't focused on the question master, they're in a daze. You mustn't let any stumbles disrupt your flow. Keep answering fluently, accept the occasional wrong answer, but you don't dwell on it, you don't allow it to upset your rhythm. Pay full attention to the question master and try to get off to a faultless start. It's worth spending some time making sure you've dealt with all the logistics of a quiz. I wear glasses, so you need to make sure you have the proper glasses, whether for reading or for distance, whatever is needed. You need to be rested, you need to have food and drink, and sleep. Just generally your clothing. If you're in a studio, studios can be freezing cold or they can be pretty warm. So you don't want to go into a warm studio in a jacket, as I did in an important telequiz once. And on the other hand, you don't want to freeze, which is also possible. So as far as you can, bring extra clothing and get advice if you're in a studio situation. Find out what temperature the studio is going to be. I don't think I'm terribly superstitious or set in my ways. Apart from being fed, watered and rested prior to a quiz. I don't have any particular rabbit's foot or routine I follow. I just say to myself, listen to the questions, start at the first question, start well, and then keep going well. Don't panic. People panic too early. It's always too early to panic. Keep playing right to the end, and who knows what can happen. I'm not sure what a concentrating face looks like. There we go. My Eric Morecambe impression. So there you are. There are some tips to dealing with the pressure that can arise during an important quiz. I still make mistakes, I still get nervous, but you've got to deal with mistakes, you've got to deal with your nerves, you've got to keep up a good rhythm and answer confidently and see how far you can go.